Hello, and welcome to Unit 15, Lesson 4, Using Tracks Creatively. My name is Dina, and here I will be teaching you how to use tracks creatively. The only limit is your imagination here. But I'd like to show you some effects I use more often just by using tracks and those tools, not the built-in transitions and effects. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. The first one is the easiest one, which is creating your own crossfades. Sometimes the clip you want to crossfade, like B-roll, might be on a different track, and you can't directly drag them and overlap them. In that case, simply drag both ends of your B-roll or the clip on top. This way, the B-roll will fade in slowly and it will look like a crossfade. You could just cut out the parts the B-roll will cover, since it won't show anyways. But normally, I like to keep the main rough draft on one track and B-roll on another, so I can clearly see where I added what. This effect is super simple to make, and I find it saves even more time than going into the preset crossfade transition. Fades are achieved by adjusting the opacity of a clip, so I'd like to introduce a couple more effects that make use of the opacity feature. The next one I'd like to mention is also fairly practical, and that is adding a watermark or logo to your videos. If you are making a branded video, such as a video for your school or for your own business, you might want to add a watermark to identify your work. This could be a photo file of a logo or just text. A watermark can show throughout your whole project. It's a good way to protect your work from being stolen and serves as a reminder of the brand or creator to your audience. To do this, simply add your logo or text on a new track. Let's name that track Watermark to be organized. For our example here, let's add the text MKTLAB for the marketing lab. I want it to be visible and recognizable, so let's change the color and font to make it bolder too. There. Now that that's done, let's close this window and open up Pan Crop. Now, I want people to see and recognize our watermark, but I don't want it to be too distracting or cover up anything important either. Let's make it smaller and move it up here towards the top where it's not too distracting. After you are satisfied with the position, come back to the timeline and zoom out so you can see your whole project. Then, just drag it to be the same length as your whole video, so the watermark will be there always. This right now is okay, but what would make it even better is if we adjusted the opacity on the text. Right now, the text is still quite bold and may cover up some of the media. So you can do this either by adjusting the opacity on the whole track, since this is our watermark only track, or go to the media event itself and drag that little blue tab down. Again, there's no rule here, so you can set the opacity to whatever you feel is appropriate. And that's how to make your own watermark. Another place to apply opacity is on the generated media, such as solid colors. A slightly transparent solid color can act like a color filter. So, for example, if you're doing something like a dream sequence, where you want the image to look bright and fake and hazy, using a bright color like white or yellow over the top and turning down the opacity could achieve that effect. However, I don't use this one very often. At least, I don't normally use it to cover the whole screen. What I do like to use semi-transparent solid colors for is lower thirds and subtitles. Lower thirds are graphics that show up on the bottom lower third of the screen. Though of course, it does not have to be exactly a third of the screen. Lower thirds are used to convey more information while not covering up the main subject. It's used most often in the news. Like when a person is being interviewed or is talking, there is a lower third that gives you the most important information, like location, name, time, headlines, etc. Often this is a pre-made graphic that just overlays on top of the main track. But you can also just make one inside of your editing software on the timeline. So let's use the clip of Professor Warden in the marketing promo as an example here. If we were to introduce him, I could add a lower third here with his name and basic information on the bottom. It will help inform the audience without covering up his face or his lecture. So, go into Media Generator, Solid Color, and pick a color you like. Once that's done, we can go into our handy pan crop tool and just move it up so only the top part of the generated media is showing. I like to use the arrow keys to be precise, or else sometimes I accidentally end up with gaps on the sides. Or, for a personal hack, I'll just zoom in. If the media is wider than the frame, there is no way for me to accidentally leave a space on the edges. There. Now, doesn't that just look like a solid colored bar along the bottom of the screen? The solid color can seem a little harsh against our video, so let's go in and soften it by making the opacity lower. Now, you have a nice base for you to add text, logos, or any other information. Here, let's add some text that says Professor Warden, and underneath that, NCHU Marketing. Move that to the right size and location in pan crop. And there's your lower third, done! Next, let's make our own multi-layered transitions and B-roll. I know, there are a lot of options in Vegas already. But Vegas transitions only help you move from one clip to another. By stacking multiple tracks and adjusting the timing, you can create your own transition or showcase many pieces of B-roll at once. For example here, let me show you how to make one where 4 different clips show up one by one to fill up our frame. It'll make sense when you see it. First, let's create 4 tracks on top of our main track. Next, pick your media. I'll pick 4 B-roll shots of equipment that we shot for the marketing promo. Place each one on a separate track. Don't worry about timing yet. First, let's make them all smaller in pan crop. I'd like our 4 to be the same size and fill up the 4 corners. This is a good time to turn on the grid. Since whatever is on top covers what's underneath, let's start with the uppermost layer. So go into pan crop, make it 1/4 of the size, then move it to the top left corner. We're gonna do this for all 4, moving them each into the top right corner, bottom left, and finally, bottom right. Use the grid to be precise and make sure there are no gaps showing in between or on the edges. So, now we have created this collage frame, which showcases lots of B-roll shots at once. But how do we make this more dynamic and into a usable transition? While we will discuss actual animating in Unit 16 Lesson 4, the easiest way right now to create movement is to have the 4 clips appear at different times. If we have them show up one by one, it will create a nice effect. So choose your order. I'm going to go clockwise, starting from the top left. Make sure they are all lined up first, starting and ending where you want them to. The top left one will naturally appear first and be there for the whole time, so we won't touch that one. The second one, the top right corner, should appear a little later than that, so let's trim or move the beginning. Notice when you move it, at the very top of the timeline, you can see a blue line that shows how many frames or how much time you are moving it. This is important because we want the rest of our B-roll to show up at the same intervals. Let's give them half a second each, which for me right now is 30 frames, since this project is on 60 frames per second. So the second one is 30 frames from the first, and if we add on to that, third one is 1 second, and the fourth is 1 second and 30 frames. Or just line them each up to the previous one, and then count 30 frames from there. Once these 4 are moved or trimmed to the right position, play it back, and it should look like this. For the ending, you can have them all disappear at once, or do the same thing backwards and have them disappear one by one. Have fun experimenting with different placements to create your own unique effects. Now, after working so hard on an effect or transition, I'm sure you wouldn't want to accidentally lose it or move it. Of course, saving your project will ensure its safety. But another way to make sure they don't get accidentally moved around and shifted is by grouping them. We mentioned how to ungroup audio from video in Unit 15 Lesson 1 when talking about how to delete unwanted sound from B-roll. However, here we can also group multiple clips together to make them behave as one. It doesn't truly freeze everything, however. So let's group this 4-clip transition that we just made by shift-selecting all of them and hitting G on the keyboard, or right-click, Group, and Create New. Now, if you move one, you move all. This applies to copy-pasting too. However, it is still possible to alter the ends. You can see here that it still lets me drag the ends of the clip. But once you reach the length of the longest clip, they will all move together again. You may notice the little indents or cuts on top of a clip. That means your media is shorter than the time you dragged it, so it replays the clip. If it's a photo, it doesn't matter, but with a video, it might cause unwanted jump cuts, so make sure to pay attention to that. Alright, those are just some of the many ways you can use tracks and track functions to create effects. I hope you have fun experimenting and finding your own creative ways to use the tracks. I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye!